Hello, welcome back to another sweaty edition of Rare Reads. So today I'm going to talk about something different, Anne. So I'm going to talk about being an ethical reader, and is there such a thing? Can we be ethical readers? You know, where do you buy your books from, if you buy them, if you choose to buy them? Do you buy them new? Do you buy them secondhand? Or is it better to just loan them from a library? And yeah, is it possible to be an ethical reader, a good reader, in an age of consumerism? So I've been thinking about doing this for a while, and I think there's two things I think that's kind of spurred me into action. The first being, I am just going to take you off there for a second, and I'm going to point you at this. I've just Googled there, look, the demise of small press publishers. If you put that into a Google search, I've lost my mouse. If you put that into a Google search, you will get lots and lots and lots of things coming up, all about, you know, small presses struggling. And there was a post that was doing the rounds, and I reckon open letter to the future of small press publishing in the UK. And this was a post that was put out by the Emma Press. So I'm just going to put you back now, put me back. So I saw that post, I reckon around Christmas time. I reckon I was still commuting. I'm sure I saw it on the train. I'm sure I was sitting on a train or standing on a train platform when I saw it. So that kind of made me think, you know, maybe I should do more, you know, to support small presses and small indie authors. And I did make a pledge to myself in January that I was going to read more indie fiction. And I did make a big effort. It didn't go very well, but I did make a big effort to do that. So at the time, I'd just recently kind of joined this writers community platform called New to the Scene, and they have a shop on there. And I stupidly thought, oh, the stuff that they'll have in their shop, it won't be like the stuff that you get, you know, on Amazon or whatever. It's going to be indie stuff, right? So I go and have a look. I go and check it out. There were some titles that I thought, oh, that sounds interesting. I'd have a look at that kind of thing. I picked a few out, was going to buy them, then realised how much they were, because they were like ridiculously expensive, probably twice as much as they are on Amazon. So I kind of just made a note of them and went and actually purchased them off Amazon. And then when they actually came, most of them were like on, you know, regular publishers anyway. Like one of them, I think, was on Penguin. There was one that was great, and that was called Common Decency. Yeah, I can't remember her name now. She's an Irish writer. That's a good book. Yeah, I would recommend checking that out. Pretty much all the others I just couldn't get on with. I think a couple maybe I read, but they were a real slog and I didn't really enjoy them. And quite a few I DNF'd. So that was my failed effort at supporting indie publishers more back in January. It was it was not a good experience. You know, I love reading, but that kind of put me off a bit, because it became like I'm doing it because I feel I ought to. I'm reading out of obligation, out of duty, rather than for the love of it kind of thing. So that it wasn't great for my, you know, reading experience sort of thing. I have supported other indie presses in the past. So Bearded Badger books, obviously, we know I've done a lot to try and promote Drew Gummerson's book that came out on Bearded Badger, which is 7 Nights at the Flamingo Hotel. But I've read a few Blue Moose books. I think I've forgotten his name now, the guy that runs Blue Moose books, but you know, he's had some quite big successes actually. I think he is very much atypical of a small press. But I have read, you know, a few Blue Moose books. I have read this Craig Jordan Baker's book that I've talked about before. That's a great book, The Napoleons. This is on Epoch. I think is it Epoch? Yeah, Epoch. And I did buy this from their website, direct from their website. I've also bought stuff off of Kirkus books, off of their website before. So I think Chopin in Kentucky was on Quercus. I think I bought that from their website. Other things as well. So Red Hen, I saw a post that they put out of one of their books, which is called Pigs, which I liked the sound of, and I went and bought that. I think I bought that from their website. Sparseal books, they put this thing out called 100,000 Birthdays, which I just thought looked really interesting and has an amazing cover. It's got one of the nicest book covers I've ever seen. It was okay, that book. I didn't love it. It was it felt a bit like I was reading non-fiction, and I'm not a big non-fiction fan. So yeah, I have done a fair bit, you know, to try and support indie publishers and indie books and indie authors. one of the problems for me with this is that sometimes I've done this as a writer, right? So if you're a writer, sometimes when you want to submit, rather than submitting to an agent who might get you, you know, through the doors at a big publisher, you can submit a lot of the time direct to a small indie press. But if you want to do that, sometimes, not all of them, but some of them will say you need proof of purchase. So you've got to buy a ticket essentially to be able to submit a manuscript. And I have done this sometimes. For instance, I think the book I bought off Quirkers, I think, was so that I could make a submission. I reckon. I did think about recently doing this because Road Songbooks had put a thing out, an open call for LGBT manuscripts. And I was going to submit, and I was going to buy a book so that I could submit. And then I just thought, you know what, actually, I think this is pretty pointless, because they would know, wouldn't they, that you're not somebody that regularly buys books off there. They would know that you're not somebody that has been maybe, you know, regularly following them and you know, sharing their stuff on the socials and things like that. So I think just a one-off purchase because you want to, you know, submit a manuscript is maybe not the best practice, really. Although I have been guilty of doing that. Before I get off this topic of small presses and buying from small presses, I want to just talk about this. So this is a book by Matt Cain called The Castle of Stories. So Matt Cain, if you're not familiar with him, used to be the culture secretary with the culture, what do they call it? Journalists that do that, the culture correspondent for Channel 4 News. Sorry, it's the heat, brain fog, and plus I'm a 50 something, you know, brain fog, yeah, on double count. So Matt Cain, yeah, used to be, he used to do the culture stuff on Channel 4. So I'd kind of seen him on there. And then he was the chief editor at Attitude magazine, which is a gay magazine, which I used to teach when I was a media teacher. And so I used to follow Attitude magazine and Matt Cain because I was kind of teaching that text, yeah. And he followed me back, and he's a lovely, lovely man, Matt Cain. Always really positive, very, very generous. He followed me back. Also, sometimes if I would comment on his posts and things, he would message me back and things like that. And when I came off of Twitter, which I did about a year ago, just because it's become a sewer now, hasn't it? I was very sad actually to go, in terms of, because I knew I would miss Matt Cain and miss his very kind of positive, upbeat posts that sometimes would just, you know, sometimes if I was having a really bad day and I would see his cheerful, smiling face and read his cheerful post, and it would just cheer me up. Yeah, that was a little bit sad when I left Twitter, that I would have to leave that behind. And then recently, he has started up a Substack, and he's kind of doing a bit of a kind of writing journal on there, and I've started following him on there. And also he's on TikTok promoting this, and he followed me on my TikTok. So we've had a little bit of a sort of exchange on there. So I basically bought this book to support him and his new venture, which is Pansy Books. So he has set up his own little small press. He's had a few books out and he's had some success, I think. Not always. It's not always been successful. It's a bit like Drew Gummerson's story. I think it's been a bit hit and miss, a bit inconsistent sort of thing. And so, yeah, I just wanted to support, you know, his new venture. I do wish him every success in the world, because I think he's such a great guy, such a generous guy, such a genuinely lovely guy. And I do wish him and Pansy Books, you know, the greatest of success. So I did go and buy this. And even though it's not my cup of tea, it's not the sort of thing I read, I'm not the target audience, but I gave it a read and I gave him a review on my TikTok. And so the other thing I'll just mention, so what spurred me into action now to do this post now. So last weekend, I went to a book event, and it was called Alternative Routes into Publishing, I think is what it was called. There was a lot of writers there, but it was a book event in Waterstones in Nottingham, and attended by, or one of the guest speakers, I should say, was Paul from Bearded Badger Books. So I actually got to meet him, and he gave me some freebies. He gave me this, which is the sequel to, or not the sequel, but it's a follow-up to Seven Nights, which I talked about in my post yesterday, that I just posted yesterday, my video yesterday. And no, he didn't give me that. I already had that ages ago. He gave me this Harry Salt, Step Forward, Harry Salt, which I'm a fair ways into, yeah. watch this space for that, because I probably will, you know, do a review of that when I finished it. I'm enjoying it. It's funny. It's funny. So yeah, I went to this event, and there was, Paul was there from Bearded Badger. There was somebody from Troubadour Publishing, which is a hybrid publisher. There was somebody from Comma Press, which they put out mostly short fiction, I think, in translation, very niche. There was somebody from, what are they called? Bad Betty Press, which do, you know, just poetry. They just specialise in poetry. And there was somebody from Global Wordsmiths, Victoria from Global Wordsmiths, who actually has edited a couple of my manuscripts for me. Hello, Victoria. And there was an author there who writes romance stuff, the kind of stuff I hate. So, yeah, you know, that event kind of made me think about this, about supporting indie presses and stuff, because they were talking about, you know, how difficult it is and whatever. And so that is why I think I am doing this video now. It gave me the kick up the arse, I think, that I need, although I had been thinking about doing it for a while. I'll just mention as well, so while I'm talking about Waterstones, because this event was in Waterstones in Nottingham, I think that is possibly the first time I've ever gone into Waterstones and not bought a book. I did not buy a single book. I was very restrained. I had a look round, obviously, and I was very tempted, but I didn't. I did buy a book from FOP. Have I got it to hand? Yeah, I have, actually. I bought this. Can't wait to read it, actually. Heart of a Dog. I bought that from FOP because it was dead cheap. I do like a bit of FOP. So, yeah, you know, and that's one option, isn't it? When we're buying books, we can buy from a bookshop. We can go to, you know, the likes of Waterstones or an independent bookshop. I don't have an independent bookshop near me. I think if I did, I would probably practically live in there. But yeah, I don't have an independent bookshop anywhere near me. I would say I buy most of my books from Amazon out of convenience. Yeah. So let's talk about Amazon. So yes, guilty as charged. I buy a lot of books off of Amazon because it's quick. I can probably get it the next day, even sometimes the same day sometimes. They're cheap. They're going to be cheaper than buying, you know, direct from the independent publisher. I've already got my account all set up and everything. It is literally just a couple of clicks and it's, you know, it's done, right? So it's just really easy, really convenient and fast, and I'm going to get it quick and it's cheap, right? So for all of those reasons, and this is why so many people use, you know, I don't like using Amazon for anything. Every time I buy anything off of there, it is begrudgingly. You know, I hate corporations with a passion. But, you know, they've got people over a barrel, haven't they, for the reasons of, you know, financial reasons, and also the convenience and the, you know, the speed and the efficiency and all of that stuff. So I do buy most of my books off there. Now, in defense of Amazon then, so, you know, we can slag them off for being a corporation and all of that stuff and say it's not ethical or whatever. But in defense of Amazon, what I would say is that it does give you one thing that you won't get with these other things, which does benefit the writer, right? So if you do want to support an indie writer and you are buying their books or you have bought their book off of Amazon, leave a review. Always leave a review if you liked it. Don't do bad reviews. Well, you can if you want, but you know. Yeah, leave them a review. Yeah, that it's so important to particularly small writers to get those reviews in. Yeah, doesn't matter so much if they've got thousands already, but if you can see, you know, that it's a great book and it hasn't got many reviews, and I know, like, sometimes, you know, by the time you've read it, you've forgotten to go and do that and whatever, but do try, you know, and leave reviews, right? So this is one thing that's great about Amazon. You can follow the writer on there and you can leave them reviews, and they can then use those reviews. And if you watch, you know, writers do this all the time on socials, they will, you know, do a screenshot of the review and they'll post it on their socials, and it helps to, you know, promote the book. Okay. So that's one thing that it has got going for it that I would say, you know, does a way that it does benefit, you know, the writers. So it's not all bad if you're buying off of Amazon. Before I move on from what I'm saying about Amazon, I just have one more bone to pick with them. So as a writer, so, you know, in 2021, I think this was a while, but during COVID, I had a bit of a midlife crisis in COVID, or COVID life crisis, whatever you want to call it. I went to pieces a bit, and I wrote a book to kind of deal with what I was kind of experiencing, which was a lot of gender dysphoria, a lot of anxiety, mental health issues, all that kind of stuff. And I wrote this book, right? And I self-published it with Kindle Direct Pro. Please do not buy this book. And this is not, I'm not doing reverse psychology on you. Honestly, don't buy this book. It's not my best work. I think I was proud of it when I put it out. But, I've done an MA in creative writing since then. My writing has got immensely, immensely better since then. I now understand the importance of other people reading it and giving you feedback. You can't just publish a book after you've written it without getting any, ARC readers or beta readers or, what, you can't do that. But I did. So I am currently in the process of, I have edited it. I've done some work on it. I've taken it off. I've tried to take it off sale. I don't think you can buy it anyway, even if you try, because I did something to the settings or something. And there was a whole massive thing that I had to go. I was locked out of my account. I kept emailing them. They wouldn't let me into my account. They wouldn't take it off sale. This went on for years, basically. But I have recently just managed to get back into my account and take it. I think I've taken it off sale. I don't think you can buy it. I have then edited the book, and I am currently trying to, the formatting's all spammed up because I had to convert it back to a Word so that I could edit it from the PDF, and then it's all fucked up, the formatting. So I am currently trying to get it back into a fit state so that I can put it back on there. So it will go back on at some point. But that was my fairly bad experience with Amazon. So as a reader, I would say a good experience. I would say it can benefit writers, but from me as a personal, from a writer's point of view, not the best. Okay, next up then, I am going to talk about WOB, World of Books. So I like the idea of rehoming a book. If there's books that I've read, I've not liked them that much, I'm not that fussed, and they're just taking up space, I will occasionally have a good old book cull, and I will send books to charity shops, or I've given books to just friends and things before, or given them to like the school libraries that I've worked in and things like that, right? So I will every now and again have a book clear out, and I do like the idea of pre-loved. I like the idea of rehoming something. So occasionally I will buy books off of World of Books, and they do often do that thing, don't they, where it'll be, is it buy 3 and get the 4th one free or something like that? So I like the idea of that. It never seems to work out like that, because always the 4 books that I want are not the ones that are in that deal anyway. So I feel like that is a bit spammy. But a recent experience I've had on there has put me off World of Books. So I'll explain to you what that was, right? So, confession time. The first Drew Gummerson book that I bought was 7 Nights at the Flamingo Hotel, because I'd seen, I think, a post that Paul had put out about it on one of his pop-up shops. I think it was in his pictures that he'd done of his books that he'd taken to the pop-up shop thing. And I bought it off Amazon, and I left a review. And I know that I'm pretty sure that Drew has used that review in some of his social posts and things to help promote it. Once I'd read that, and I loved it so much, as you know, if you've been watching this channel, I was like, it wasn't like, I'll buy another one. It was like, right, what else has he written? And I need it all right now. So the 3 other books I bought together. And because I was buying a bunch together, I thought, I'm going to go to World of Books, right? Because it'll be cheaper, and I might get another free. I might get one free as well. I didn't. It wasn't in the deal anyway, obviously, because it never is. But I, at that point, I'd kind of, I'd found them all, and I'd put them all in my basket and whatever. And I was like, well, let's buy some pre-loved books, without really thinking about what that means for the author. So I don't even know if Drew or the publishers of those books is it just World of Books making money off of that book? I don't know how it works, and I'd never really thought about this before, but it has been on my conscience a fair bit this time, in terms of, does the writer get, and so I Googled it, and I think it said something about they have to have a certain kind of account or something. And then also another thing that I didn't like about this experience that I had with World of Books was that I wanted to leave reviews for them. I thought, well, if I'm not giving any royalties, at least I can give reviews, right? So, but I couldn't figure out how to do it. I couldn't see where you do the review. So I emailed World of Books, and they said it took a certain amount of time. You couldn't do it like straight away. And then they had to send another email with a link on it or something, and then I had to use that link to go and put the reviews on, which I did. So I have reviewed the Lodger, Saltburn and Mickey James on World of Books. But when I've then afterwards, like yesterday, I think I tried yesterday or the day before, when I was doing my review of the Lodger, I tried to go and have a look at those reviews on there, and I couldn't see them. I couldn't figure out how to see them. So that is a big problem to me, you know, for if a writer is, you know, relying on those reviews to help sell their books, and people can't even see those reviews, even me that had written them couldn't see them, then yeah, to me that is a big problem. So I may well not buy from World of Books anymore. I don't know. I mean, comment me your experiences on this, please do. I would love to get, you know, comments about this stuff. But before I shut up about World of Books, yeah, so here's something interesting. So this that I bought off of World of Books, look, is signed by Drew, look, to Donna. Hope you enjoy. She obviously didn't, did she? What's wrong with you, Donna? God knows. Anyway, that was World of Books. Okay, and then the other thing that we need to talk about then is libraries, isn't it? And using your local library, supporting your local library. I am a big fan of libraries. I thought it was very sad when the libraries started to close down. I'm very lucky that where I live, I have literally 10 minutes away, I've got a library in the village, and also a bit further than that in the nearest town to me, which is Mansfield. I've got another library there as well, yeah. And the libraries are good in terms of, or the library system, I think, is very good in terms of when I've wanted things in the past and they've not had it and I've ordered it, you know, it takes a while, but they will order books in. And often it will be, you know, a case of they've just got to get it from one of the other, you know, libraries kind of thing. So let's talk pros and cons then of libraries, right? So yeah, I think a library is a very important thing. I think it would be an absolute tragedy if we lost libraries. And I think every time one shuts down, it makes me very sad. My perfect job would be, I would like to go back in time to pre-internet and just be a librarian and sit with my little stamp and shelving the books, and I would be in seventh heaven. Yeah, so I think they're very important. I think they're important in terms of, I think it's important that everybody can read books and that there are books accessible to everybody for free. I think that's a really important thing. I also think, you know, libraries do a lot else as well, don't they? They don't just loan out books, you know, they do all kinds of community. I think they're a very important kind of community hub kind of thing. And they do lots of like educational things. They do lots of things for kids, you know, in summer holidays and all the school holidays and stuff. Also, right. So a few weeks ago, the weekend that I moved house, this is really bad timing. This is typical me. I decided to go and do a morning's volunteering at my local library, and I stood with a clicker, and they do a local count at our local libraries, and so I went and stood with a clicker, and I was just reading my book. I was reading Lincoln in the Bardo, great book, and just clicking every time someone came in. And I can tell you now, it wasn't very many. I think it was about 30 something people for the whole morning that used that library. So, you know, they are under threat, and I do think this, right? I think libraries are like the BBC. One day we're not going to have the BBC anymore, and we'll all go, oh my God, do you remember when we had iPlayer? Do you remember when we had CBeebies? Do you remember when we had BBC Bite Size and all of that stuff, right? And radio, all those radio stations and all the rest of it, right? So I do think it would be very sad if we lost the BBC, but I think it is inevitable. And I think that libraries is a similar situation. So I think it's important that we have free books. I think it's important as just a safe space for people to go. Tell you a little story, actually. I went into Mansfield Library a couple of years ago. I went to use their Writers and Artists yearbook because I never buy them. I always just go and use it in the library. And there was a homeless guy in there, and somebody was giving him a really hard time because he'd fallen asleep. And I just thought, you absolutely miserable. What are you doing working in the library if you've got that attitude? But yeah, so I think they're just a really important resource space, a very valuable, you know, thing for communities to have. And I think it is, yeah, very sad when any library closes down. And I'll tell you another little story about libraries. So the very first book that I wrote, which is called The Livingston Theory, is about a library book. And it's basically this library book It's a bad book. It's a really bad book. It's terrible, written by this guy called Livingston. And so the only people that have read it are the people that have, it's in the local library. There's a copy in there and pretty much nobody else has ever read it. And then it gets passed around. Somebody does read it and loves it. And then it starts getting passed around the village kind of thing. So it has a little moment. So I really enjoyed writing that book, and I really enjoyed coming up with all these, like, you know, characters that lived in this little local village and telling their stories. And that was really, really me paying homage to libraries and how much I just love libraries. I love being in the second I set foot inside a library, I just feel like I'm at home. It's like getting a warm hug. I love it. I absolutely love it. Same with bookshops, I suppose, really, as well. But yeah, one thing I would say as well, just before I shut up about libraries, when I was doing this, you know, clicker thing and counting people in, I did notice there's two types of people that are using at least my local library anyway. And it was either young parents bringing their kids, and their kids actually weren't really reading. Most of them were like playing Lego and stuff like that. It was more of a social thing, which is still important, obviously. And older people, and a lot of those older people, they weren't just getting a book service. They weren't just getting to loan books, right? They were getting a social interaction. And for some of these people, I guess, you know, they might not have that many social interactions. They might not have that, you know, that much of a network kind of thing. You know, loneliness amongst old people is a thing, isn't it? Is quite a significant, you know, issue. And so, yeah, they were having, you know, nice chats with the staff, and they knew them by name. And you know, and I guess that's quite an important part of that might be the highlight of their week for some of these people. Yeah. Not trying to stereotype old people. I'm old myself anyway, so obviously I'm not doing that. So that's the other option, isn't it, is to use the library. So that's all the good things about libraries that I've just said there. But now I am going to just talk about some of the reasons maybe I don't use the library as much as I would like. So when I have used the library in the past, it's mostly been when I've been off school. So obviously I'm a teacher, and in term time, I don't get a lot of time to read, or I didn't used to. It's not as bad now because I've reduced my hours. But in the past, when I've been like, you know, full time, running a department, you know, it's a lot. I wouldn't get a lot of time to read. And a lot of the time when I would try and read, I'd just fall asleep. So I'd be that knackered. So one of my problems is if I got books out during term time, the date would run out. They'd expire. You know, I'd have to go on the website, renew it, and then when I'd try and renew it, somebody would be waiting for it. So then I'd have to just take it back, and it wouldn't get read. And then I'd kind of probably forget all about it. So this is like, I think the other day I was doing a video and I talked about Barbara Kingsolver, and I think both the Barbara Kingsolvers that I have read, Poisonwood Bible and Flight Behaviour, is it called, or Flight Patterns, something like that. Both excellent books, by the way. Both of those I did loan out from my local library. And then Demon Copperhead I got from the library, and then before I could, even before I got very far in, I think I was only a couple of chapters in, and then somebody was waiting for it and I had to take it back, and I've never got round to, you know, getting it back out, or indeed, as I probably should, buying it. So that's a big problem for me. Yeah, is just kind of, you know, not having the time to read them, and then them expiring, and then somebody else waiting for it, sort of thing. So I guess I would, if I was a pensioner and I didn't have a job, maybe I probably would use the library a lot more. The other thing is, I guess, choice. Like I'm saying, you can order things in, but you're only going to be able to order something if it already is in their system, you know, if they've got it at another branch or whatever. If you want them to actually, you know, acquire a book for you on your behalf, it takes a lot longer. And I'll tell you another story. I'm going back to this again. I'm not just here to promote my book today, but I'll tell you another story about this, right? So when I'd got this, you know, when I'd self-published this book, and I tried so hard to promote it, and I tried everything, you know, social media and everything that like you're supposed to try and market it and whatever. I think there's a really bad, I think my very first video on here, if you scroll right down to the bottom, is me doing a stupid prank at the local library with Mission Impossible music, trying to, like, you know, put this on the must-read shelf or something stupid like that. So I took a copy of this, or a couple of copies, I think, to the library and said, I'm a local author, I've got this book out, can I give you a copy and will you just, put it on your shelves for me? And they were very, oh, yes, of course we will. We like to support local authors and blah, 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 and whatever. And so I left it with them. I also left them a poster that I'd made as well, which they said they would put up. And then for weeks and weeks and weeks and weeks, I kept going in to have a look and it wasn't there. And eventually I asked somebody and they said, oh, yeah, it's because it takes a long time to get into the system because they have to get the ISBN number on it. They have to get the label, the sticker put on the back of the spine, and it has to do this and it has to do that and da-da-da-da-da and whatever. It was a very complicated process, probably needlessly complicated, I would imagine. It's a government run thing, isn't it? So it's going to be red tape galore, isn't it, sort of thing. But here you go. Here's the irony then, right? So the book that I wrote, the Livingston Theory that I wrote about the library book, in that book, his book, nobody sees it because it's stashed on the bottom shelf in local interest. It's not in with the novels. Somebody's put it in local interest. So therefore, who looks at local interest books? Do you know what I mean? And it's right down on the bottom shelf. So eventually, when my book did get on the shelves of my, it wasn't in the local one, actually, it was in Mansfield. I think it's in Mansfield. There is a copy in Mansfield Library, I believe. They put it, yes, on the bottom shelf of local. I swear, honestly, I swear down, I am not just making that up. That is a genuine, bona fide, real life coincidence, or real life irony, if you like. And I will occasionally, or I used to, I probably wouldn't do this now, because like I say, I was proud of it when it came out, but now I know it's not my best work. But I will occasionally, when I go into Mansfield Library, I'll find it and I'll go and put it on the quick read shelf, or I'll go and put it somewhere where people are going to see it. I'm sure, much to the annoyance of the librarians. So there you go. Yeah, that's kind of our options, isn't it? We can buy new, we can buy secondhand, we can buy from direct from the publisher, we can buy from the likes of Amazon, or we can, support our local library. I am, having done this, having planned all of this out and thought about it for days and days since, last week, I've been thinking about, this a lot, and I don't know. I just don't know the answer. Let me know what you think, obviously. Maybe if we all collectively started buying more from the independent publishers, and they started to get, more financial security, then, maybe those books would be more visible, and they would be, and maybe they would be able to take on more titles. A lot of the time with small presses, because of financial reasons, or because they're such a small team, they can only bring out 2 or 3 books a year. Think about how many books something like Penguin is going to be published in a year. And that's why they're churning out a lot of just samey, trending stuff that's just full of tropes and whatever. So, maybe that's the answer, but that would take a pretty much a tidal wave of people, wouldn't it, to make that decision? It's not going to just be the likes of somebody like me just making that decision on their own. Is not going to really make any difference, is it? Not going to be a drop in the ocean at the end of the day. And, I have thought about, despite what I know about the struggles and the demise of, small presses, I have thought a lot about launching my own small press. Or, I think what I'm doing here, this channel is partly because I'm trying to build up some visibility and an audience who potentially at some point, in the future, I might sell books to. When I went along to the book event at Waterstones, I was 100% pretty much mind made up. I've got a brilliant book sitting in my OneDrive. Fuck it, I'm just going to self-publish it. And that's what I'd gone along with, the mindset of, I just want to find out, who do I go with? Troubadour Publishing I knew was going to be there, and I was very much, thinking about maybe I approach them, sort of thing, or pick Paul at Bearded Badger. So yeah, I had made my mind up, and then curveball. Paul was asked about, because he's been sort of on a hiatus. Bearded Badger, I don't think they've put anything out for a good couple of years, I think. But apparently, watch this space, submissions are opening in the next month or 2, I think. So that's now made me think, I do think, you know, what Paul wants is out there stuff, and my book is, you know, it's about a womb hopping ghost baby. You know, the baby dies at the beginning of the book. It's a, you know, a stillbirth. The mother and the baby die. It's in medieval times, and then the ghost is able to, has a superpower and is able to womb hop, so can go and inhabit the wombs of living women, and then goes womb hopping kind of through the centuries. So it starts in medieval times and it comes right up to the like near future, ends up in outer space, and she's looking for a connection, like a bit like me. And she's called Mercy. That is my book. It's fairly unique. I mean, comment me if you know different, but I cannot find a womb hopping ghost baby book that's already out there. But can I get it published? Can I, Helen? I had an agent and she couldn't sell it. And we came very, 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 very close. We came very close. So, you know, I desperately, desperately want to get this book out there. I think it would bring a lot of joy to a lot of people. Yeah, now I am very torn about, do I wait for Bearded Badger, or do I just bite the bullet, and do I just self-publish? I don't know. Anyway, that's for the birds, isn't it? So that's it for this one. Quite enjoyed chatting about all of that stuff, actually. Hope you enjoyed it as well. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And I will catch you next time. Take care and keep reading.